square root of a Surdic number. So we might given a sort number. Let's say 7 plus 2 root 10. Okay, we might be given a sort number of 7 plus 2 root 10, and we might be asked to find the square root of this number. So how do we go about this? So the first thing to do is we say let the square root, give it a variable. The square root of 7 plus 2 root 10 be root m plus root n. Some use x and y, some use a and b, depending on what to do. So since this is the square root now, since root m plus root n is the square root, so if you square it, okay, is equals to 7 plus 2 root 10. Okay, so now we'll have to open the square. This process here, we'll have to open it. So we'll have root m plus root n into root m plus root n is equals to 7 plus 2 root 10. So if you open this bracket further, so we'll have it at m plus 2 root mn plus n. Okay, skip some steps there, so because I'm sure that a lot have been done on that. So what we just did basically was do root m into root m plus n root n plus root n into root m plus root n. So with respect to that, we have root m squared, plus root m n plus root m n plus root n squared. So we have m plus 2 root m n plus n. Okay, so in that case, we have we will bring the one without root to one side and the one with root to the other side. So we have m plus n plus 2 root mn is equals to 7 plus 2 root 10. So in that scenario, we will take the one, this one, we have to compare this to this, and then we will compare this to this. Okay, so as m plus n is equals to 7. All this can be this is just like equating sorts together, and that will be equation 1. And also we have 2 root mn to equals to 2 root 10, and this will be our equation 2. So all we are just going to do is that we are going to solve these two equations, and when we solve those two equations, we put them back into root m plus root n, and we'll have the square root of the number. So let's solve the equation. So we know that this is m plus n is equals to 7, and we know that if we divide both sides by 2, we have mn root mn to be equals to root 10. Therefore we are saying mn is equals to 10. Alright, so from equation 1, we can call this equation 1, and we say this is the extension of equation 2. So from equation 1, we just right now we are solving simultaneous equation. From equation 1, we make m with the formula, so m is equals to 7 minus n. So let's call this equation 3. So we can substitute equation 3 into equation 2. So we have it to be that mn is equals to 10. So wherever we see m, we substitute with 7 minus n. So 7 minus n into n is equals to 10. So when we open the brackets, we have that 7n minus n squared is equals to 10. So if you put it in the right quadratic formula, so we have minus n squared plus 7n. If we bring the 10 to the other side, right? We will have it to be minus 10 is equals to 0. So we can multiply all through by minus 1, multiply by minus 1, okay, to remove the minus sign here. So we have okay, so when we multiply all through by minus 1, so then we put minus 1 outside, minus n squared plus 7n minus 10 is equals to 0, and we also multiply this one by minus 1. Okay, so this will give us n squared minus 7n plus 10. Okay, so we multiply by number is 0. So when we solve this one quadratic equation now, we will have two variables. So we have n to be 5 or n to be equals to 2. So now when we have 2, n is equals to 5, and also we have n is equals to 2. So that means we are going to have two m equations. Remember that's from equation 3. Okay, that's m is equals to n minus 7. So when n is equals to 5, my m is equals to 5 minus 7, and that will be minus 2. So when n is equals to 2, we're using the m is equals to n minus 7 equation. So okay, sorry, the equation is 7 minus n. Okay, m is 7 minus n. Since I apologize for that, so 7 minus n. So when we solve this, we'll have 7 minus 5, and that will give me 2. And when we solve this, we have m to be 7 minus 2, and that will give me 5. So in short, when m is equals to 2, n is equals to 5, and when n is equals to 5, n is equals to 2. So with respect to that, remember that we said that we recall that the square root is root m equals to root n, right? So when m is equals to 2 and n is equals to 2, so that our first square root, okay, our first square root, okay, is m is 2, okay, and n is 5, and this will be our second square root, okay, and this will be what? M is 5, okay, and plus n to be 2. So that means we have two square roots. So we have root 5 plus root 2 plus root 5, and we have root 5 plus root 2. Now we notice that they are the same. So in conclusion, we can say that it is root 2 plus root 5, appearing twice. So in conclusion, we can say that the square root of 7 plus 2 root 10 is root 2 plus root 5 twice up. So let's recap on what we did before we move into the next example. So the first thing we did was to give the square root a format. Okay, let's say root m plus root n. Okay, so that will be the format of the square root, and since that is the square root, then we can now square both sides, square it to give us the question itself. So when we did that here, we arrived here. So what we did at this point here, we compared the two this one together. We took the rational numbers, that's n plus n, we equated it to 7, and we took the rational, that's 2 root mn, to be equals to 2 root 10. Right, so then with that we were able to come up with two equations. Okay, that's n plus n is equals to 7, and 2 root mn is equals to 2 root 10. So we arrived at m plus n is equals to 7 and mn is equals to 10. So when we solve these two simultaneous equations, or two equations by substitution method, then we arrive at n is equals to 5 or n is equals to 2. So for each value of n, we are able to arrive at a new value of n, right? A different value of n. So when m is equals to 2, our n is 5, and when m is equals to 5, our n is 2. So we now recall that the square root is root m plus root n. So with that we evaluate the square root by substituting m and n respectively for each condition. So most of the time, it's not all the time that we will have this equal root situations. So let's take another example. Let's say example 2 on this scenario. So we say find the square root of 14 minus 4 root 6. Okay, so the first thing we say is let the square root, okay, let the square root be root b, okay, minus root q. Now we notice in the first question we use plus, okay, we use root m plus root n. Okay, now this is the reason. Notice that here is plus, okay, this is plus here, okay, and also definitely we have to follow the same order. It will be plus here. But in the second question we saw that this place was minus, okay, and for ease we use minus. Okay, so in that scenario, so we can just say that root p minus root q all squared is equal to 14 minus 4 root 6. Okay, so let's square this side. So we have root p minus root q into root p minus root q will be equals to 14 minus 4 root 6. Okay, so with this, when we open up the bracket, which I believe everyone is capable of doing that now, so we will arrive at let us do it together. Root p into root p minus root q minus root q into root p minus root q will be equals to 14 minus 4 root 6. So when we open the brackets, we have root p squared minus root pq minus root pq and plus q squared. Okay, is equals to 14 minus 4 root 6. So this will give us p minus 2 root pq plus q is equals to 14 minus 4 root 6. So with that, we can say that's p plus q minus 2 root pq is equals to 14 minus 4 root 6. Alright, so as usual, we compare, equate the sort. So we have the rational, okay, and then also we have the irrational numbers and together. So in that scenario, we have our first equation of p plus q is equals to 14, and then minus 2 root pq to be equals to minus 4 root 6. Now let's divide both sides here by minus 2, right? Minus 2 and then minus 2. So you have that root pq is equals to, okay, this is minus 2, sorry, this is equals to 2 root 6. Okay, now this reminds us that we can square both sides, okay, to find an expression of pq. Okay, so let's square both sides. Okay, or we go from here, we go this, take this, we take 2 root 6 to the complex formats. That's basically what we want to do. So we square both sides, we have pq all squared is equals to 2 root 6 all squared. So this squared here we cancel the square root, so we have pq is equals to 2 squared root 6 squared. So this will be 4. Now the square, let's cancel the square root, multiplied by 6. So my pq is equals to 24. Okay, and we'll call this one equation 1, and we can also call this one equation 2. Alright, so with that done, we can now solve the two equations simultaneously. So let's recall the two equations. P plus Q is equals to 14, and PQ is equals to 24. So equation 1, equation 2. Okay, so when we solve these two equations as easy as like we've done before, then we plug it back into the expression, and then we have our answer. So in that scenario, so let's say from equation 1 by substitution, my P is 14 minus Q. So we can call this one equation 3. So we substitute equation 3 into equation 2. Right? So PQ is equals to 24. And then since our P is 14 minus Q, multiplied by Q is equals to 24. So when we open the brackets, we have 14Q minus Q squared is equals to 24. And now let's try and put it in the format of the quadratic equation. So 14Q minus Q squared plus 14Q, 24 will come to the other side to turn to minus, is equals to 0. Okay, now we multiply both sides by minus 1, or multiply through by minus 1 by minus 1. So we have minus 1 into minus Q squared plus 14Q minus 24 is equals to 0 into minus 1. So we have Q squared minus 14Q plus 24 is equals to 0. So whatever method you use to solve your quadratic equation, calculator or quadratic formula, solving, method of squares, usually so we have two formulas. Okay, so then we will have two answers. That's Q is equal to 2, and Q is also equals to 12. So now that we have two variables, we have Q is equals to 2, we have Q is equals to 12. So we have to find what is P in that scenario, in each scenario. So remember from our equation 3, that our P is 14 minus Q. Okay, so our P is 14 minus Q. So P is what? 14 minus 2, and that will give us 12, and P is 14 minus Q. 14 minus 12, and that will give us 2. So in that scenario, we can write it in P when P is 12, Q is 2, and when P is 2, Q is 12. Right? So the next thing to do now is to write out our square roots formats. Okay, the format for square roots that we have before is will be called, okay, square roots. Okay, is roots P minus roots Q. Okay, so let's consider the first square root. Okay, that is when P is equals to 12, okay, and Q is equals to 2. So we're taking this one first. So in that scenario, so we have root P minus root Q, and that will give us 12 minus root 2. Now root 12 can be further reduced. Okay, since we know that 12 is 4 times 3 minus root 2, and if you follow the law of indices that we have established from the beginning, then we realize that 12 can be broken down to 4 by 3, and that will be root 4 multiplied by root 3, and root 4 is 2. So we have it to be 2 root 3 minus root 2. Okay. Now we'll talk about the second square root. The second square root is when p is equal to, that means we are talking about this, when p is equals to 2 and then q is equals to 12. So remember our format is root p minus root q. Okay. And our root p has root 2 minus root 12. So we apply the same principle we have here to root 12. So that will be root 2 minus root 4 times 3. Okay, and that will give us root 2 minus root 4 into root 3 according to the law of sorts. And that will give us root 2 minus 2 root 3. Okay, so the two roots of the square roots. Okay, when we say square roots, I'm not talking about two roots. When I talk about cube roots, we're talking about 3 roots. So the square roots of this of the of let's write it down. The square roots of 14 minus 4 root 6 are 1, 2 root 3. Okay, minus root 2 and 2 root 2 minus 2 root 3. So let's take a quick recap on everything we've done so far on square roots. So the first thing we did was to have a format for the square root. So we can say it is root m plus root n or root p plus minus root q, depending on the sign at for the question. Okay, so if it is plus, we'll be using a positive, and if it is negative, we'll definitely be using a minus in the square root format. Okay, so then we square, we take the square of the assumed square roots. Okay, and equate it to the question we're given, right? And then we generate two equations from there. So with those two equations, we solve them. And when we solve them, we will arrive at two answers. So with that, we've come to the end of this video, and the next video will be talking about solving equations on irrational form. So we can have x, okay, in a Surdic equation, and we'll be requested to solve them to find two values of x, okay, to find two or more values of x. So in that case, see you in the next video.